Hello and welcome to Cruising and Musing. I am your host Rob, and we are not cruising for our musing tonight. It has been one hell of a stormy day, and there's still some thunder clouds kicking around here. So there's big old deep puddles out there, and I can still hear people street racing off in the distance. So we're not going to be rolling around with some of the street lights out, puddles of unknown depth going around, and various roads flooded. But I want to do some thinking about the teacher shortage and kind of talk my way through where I started to see the teacher shortage come. And then in later videos, I'm going to try to focus on why there's a teacher shortage here and where it came from. Then talk about what we can do about it and what we can do moving into the future later, and like some changes I think need to happen for education in other videos. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, maybe give me a thumbs up or make a comment so this can be more of a two-way conversation. But I will say, when I first entered the world of teaching in 2011, well, it was before that. Let's say it was 2010, because I was doing my student teaching. Definitely didn't feel like there was a teacher shortage. In fact, I was very worried about getting jobs and, keeping employment because, when there's not a labor shortage, it's a hiring, like when there's a housing shortage, it's a seller's market. When there's a labor surplus, it's the employer's market. And when I first got out of college, there was definitely a feel in the air that I might have to move away from, the area in order to get teaching work and whatnot. But fortunately, I fell in with my administrator in the position that I'm still in now. We talked in the other video a little bit how I hate change, so that's made me very happy. So when I started teaching for the district in about, 2011, 2012, that school year, didn't really see much in the way of teacher shortages, but where I did start to see it start to come up and be a thing was 2014, 2015. And what I noticed was that there was creative schedule making and creative accounting going on, where kids are being guided to courses where one teacher, could have 600 students, regardless of how many kids they actually had. And what I mean is, an example of this would be, like we have an OJT program here, on the job training. What that means is that you have a high schooler working part-time somewhere, and they're punching the clock, and we're giving them class credit for having a job. So instead of, having a class schedule of, say, 7 classes where you have your 4 core and 3 electives, they might do their last 2 elective courses of the day on the job training so they can leave and go to work and get done at a decent hour, because they got to get up at 5 in the morning and go to school the next day. It's a way of cutting the fat on those extra classes. Well, here's the thing. The only thing that has to be done is checking in with the time card a couple times this semester. So you can have one teacher or one faculty member, it doesn't even really need to be a teacher, overseeing that OJT program, and you might have hundreds of kids reporting to that one teacher on paper for 6th and 7th period, where normally, in a normal classroom, you might be able to fit a maximum of 30 into a class and be overstacking them in that case. And that's the kind of creative scheduling I'm talking about, or creative bookkeeping that was helping hide the teacher shortage. The other thing I saw starting around 2014, 2015 was the introduction of virtual learning labs around the district, where they would have a teacher that was working at the virtual school, and they would have their own students at the virtual school they needed to teach, and then they'd have 50, 60, like half unit size loads of students at this school, where they would put all the kids in the media center and rotate them through the day in the media center, where they would, say, do a Spanish class online. And you'd have that at 3 or 4 schools. So now you have 3 or 4 schools where they didn't have to hire a teacher and could just, double load their media specialist or throw a janitor in a classroom to watch the kids. And I literally found a janitor being the one who I was talking to when I had a remedial science class that was partially a virtual learning lab. Janitor in there with the kids every day. That's not a dig on janitors, but they'll claim there's every class has a highly effective teacher, and because or highly qualified teacher, and because the virtual teacher is highly qualified, they're going to keep telling everyone that the class is being overseen by a highly qualified teacher, but the person physically in the room, is the school janitor having his hour sit down, or it's some poor teacher that has been pulled in off their planning period to watch all those kids working on the computer as though they're going to get anything done, trying to keep 40 to 50 kids working on their online work at the same time they're trying to do their plan and stuff. So I first saw that, like I said, 2014, 2015. That definitely grew. That was a major part of the work. They actually split the program I'm in, our teachers, into our core program that I was kept in, and then we had another separate wing of teachers that all just worked those VLL labs and enabled that sort of creative bookkeeping to hide the teachers shortages we were coming up with. 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. And it wasn't really until the pandemic that got put a stop to because, the chaos that broke loose. So I think you already had teachers not there and not present starting as early as 6 years ago. And I think that comes partially because the baby boomers, we call them boomers, baby boomers for a reason. They're getting old. They're starting to retire. My grandparents are baby boomers. They were on the leading edge. One was born in 42, the other born in 43. They're in their 70s now. So the teachers that were born during that time period, whose parents fought World War II, they're retiring. They're dying. They're, moving on. They're leaving the profession, and it's been no small kept secret that Gen X and millennials were smaller in number than the boomers, so it should be no surprise that there's fewer teachers coming in behind to replace the baby boomers. And when you really think about it, if you're, a boomer and you're 67 years old and you can get early Social Security and it's 2020 and you're looking at being in the high risk category for the Rona, and you're not going to make any more money if you keep teaching to raise your Social Security payout, you're going to jump ship. There's just nothing that's worth that. So it's small surprise that, like here, we probably had 15% of our teaching force, just go ahead and retire at the start of 2020. And I imagine it was like that all across the board. Then the other aspect of this that's been the slow building teacher shortage is that, Florida did away with tenure in 2011. I missed getting tenure by 1 year. I missed having a professional contract by 1 year. Every year I go in to the end of the year not knowing if I have a position next year because they don't have to tell me. I still don't know if I have a position for next year. Not for certain. I've had my final evaluation for the year. Highly effective, all A's, stars across the board, the same way it's been for the last 7 years. But I don't know whether or not I have a job next year because I'm on an annual contract and they don't have to tell me till the 10th of May. So here I'm going to be for, 2 more weeks not knowing. And while I can assume I have the job, it's not on paper. Until you have that paper in your hand, you don't know for sure. And there's also been changes to like the retirement plans and everything, and like the progressions, and other complications, especially like new teacher pay starting out in 2011 was like 36,000 at the time, here in the district, and that was definitely low and hadn't gone up with any consideration coming out of the recession. Now that seemed like a lot of money to me at the time, but I grew up well below the poverty line, and I was sleeping in a van for a while there before I started that first year of teaching. So blew me away to make that much money. But for most people that have a different optic on money, that was not enough to really even get by on. And I couldn't get by on that now. I couldn't. I have mentioned in other videos I've been very careful with my finances, but if I had to start at 36 as a gross income, I couldn't afford to live on that right now. The 50 I have, well, I guess I could get by on the 36, but I'd have no wiggle room at all. Whereas the 50 I have now is like the difference on what gives me the wiggle room and the breathing room. So, you had a very low starting teacher pay all the way up until 2021 school year, when DeSantis jacked the pay up with that significant raise and brought the teachers up to a brand new teacher now starts at $47,500 in the district. So that very huge jump in starting pay will eventually help with this teacher shortage, but word has to get out that hey, because for a very long time there the starting teacher pay was so low that it's going to be a hard sell to people in college to go to school for being teachers, to sign up for 5 years and not being able to pay your bills, to finally get up to the point where you can pay your bills if they stick to the salary schedule they sell you. Because again, remember, there's the bait and switch where teachers don't always get paid what they signed on the dotted line to get paid. So I feel like that's sort of part of the building thing. Is there was a very long stretch where starting teacher pay was kind of ignored, and it was just kind of too low for too long, and that really turned off new people from coming in. And then there's the whole college experience for teachers. You can go to school for 4 years, be a banker, be a broker, go into the private sector, make $90,000 and work part-time. I have a brother who's an example of that. Or you can sign up to be a teacher, go in, maybe have a program that's shaped well for you, or have an experience like I did, where they were having me do pre-med classes to get my biology credits, to be a science teacher, or have me doing, like military history and public sector finance courses to cover my, social sciences courses on the upper level for clearing me for going in and having a social studies degree. Now, while I greatly enjoyed those classes, none of them did any good for me, as a teacher. I have a whole lot of knowledge I never get to talk about to anyone because we're still trying to establish the basics in those broad courses in middle school and high school. It isn't like I can teach them Biology 1 and then get them again for Biology 2 and Biology 3. Even AP Biology does not go into the level of genetics I took classes on. So I don't get to share that knowledge with any point. It's doing no one any good rattling around in my brain, except for me when I'm reading, scientific research. So teacher preparation, you're asking people to sign up for 4 or 5 years, or in some areas they require a master's degree before you can teach. So that's 6 years, 7 years of someone's life you're asking for them to surrender and pay for in order to come out the other end knowing they're not going to make that much money and be disrespected and not have job security and not have the other tangible benefits that those who came before in the profession have had, or having to deal with the mess that those who came before made in the profession. So I feel like that's turned off a lot of people. Not to mention the entire student loan business going on. When I graduated in 2010, I was carrying about $30,000 of student loan debt. I'd imagine now, if I was going through just with the price of the classes and everything, and I borrowed as little as I could to get by, but I went through that 2008, 2009 recession. Even in 2010, we were still in a recession in this area. I'd imagine if I was going to school now and I came out, with having taken loans in a similar way, I'd probably be closer to $45,000, $50,000 in debt. So let's say it's 2 years ago, before that new teacher pay starts, I'd be looking at carrying $50,000 in debt, having to pay, even with an income-based plan, say $400 a month off the top. So, right away, out of my $36,000 starting teacher pay, or I think it was $38,000 at that point before the big bump, $38,000 gross. Take $6,000 off the top for taxes. There's $30,000 after taxes, and probably less than that. Then out of that $30,000, you figure $400 a month paying on student loans. 400 times 12. 4,800. So let's knock that down to 25 for flat math. $25,000 a year after you're paying for your student loans and pay your taxes. That's not very much money at all. You could make that $25,000 a year, haven't not gone to college at all. So that definitely would be a contributing factor to why you didn't have a lot of people enter the profession in the last decade. And now you have people retiring. And it's going to take a while now to get people, like there's a 4-year fuse on that. If we had 1,000 people sign up to be teachers tomorrow who were, just going into college, we get the first of them in 4 years, and we wouldn't get some of them for 6 years. So, the higher teacher pay, the change in the incentive structure and everything, well, that's a step in the right direction. It's going to take time for that to pay off. And that's really where we're at with this teacher shortage, is that a lot of the incentives that changed haven't had time to kick in. And the incentives that did have the promise to change things and start to head off, that teacher shortage, were undermined and aggravated and frustrated by what went on with the pandemic. And then the pandemic itself, I don't have to tell any of you, like we've mentioned before, a huge walk-off of your most experienced teachers because they were being asked to put themselves at risk when there was no payout for it. So they made a very logical choice and walked away to go ahead and retire. And then with all the bullshit that was also required of us, younger teachers started to walk away too, to go and find more fulfilling work where they were not being abused by administration or being asked to work an 80-hour work week for a 40-hour paycheck that wasn't that big to start with on the get-go. So that's my take on where we got with the teacher shortage. I haven't heard anyone talk about the creative accounting and bookkeeping points before, nor have I heard anyone talk about the baby boomers and the fact they were already starting to retire, even back in 2015 before. So that's 2 new points for you to think about, and I think I was rehashing a lot of other points I heard mentioned priorly. The admin abuse and whatnot that went on over the last few years. And again, at the end of the day, nobody wants to work for a job where they feel like their life is not valued and who they are as a person is not valued. And, at the end of the day, if I died tomorrow, my job would be posted like clockwork 2 weeks from now on Monday morning. As soon as the opening opened, they'd be looking for my replacement. If I died, walked away, quit, whatever. So, no one's irreplaceable to the system. And when you're working for the system, that's going to grind down and be a thing.